welcome again. You're listening to Dude, Where's My ROI? This is Jaljit Ajani, your host. And when I am not podcasting, I help businesses turn into brands using content hacking and marketing. Today we have someone really special with us. We have Karthik Nagarajan in the house. He's a man wearing multiple hats, being a chief content officer at Wavemaker. He also hosts the very successful, the very popular Filter Coffee podcast, and he's also a filmmaker. Get ready for one of the most interesting conversations that I have ever had on this show till date.
When I had finished my MBA, I had two offers to pick from at campus. One was with a very well known global banking brand,
Right.
and the other was with this really small startup which was into cryptography. Right? I was as curious as you are right now. I wanted to
Right.
figure out what it was, and that's how I started my career. It's a wonderful world. It is connected to a lot of other industries, right? So it's not just about cryptography, right? Of course, what we did back then was a lot of white hatting, ethical hacking sort of thing, understanding,
Correct.
what are the uh, areas where you need more security, what are the loopholes in the existing systems.
Right.
And then, of course, we had cryptographic solutions for the same, right? But then, the extension of that industry is a lot into systems audit, a
Okay.
lot into security practices. And much, much more. I don't want to bore you with the
No,
details.
that's perfectly fine. Uh, Tell me more about your journey. Like today, what you're doing and where you started off.
Right.
It must have been like, because I saw somewhere you were into sales, and this was maybe somewhere out of India, right? And then you came back to India, you launched ad relevance, you started getting traction for that. Then you have launched India's first social listening product, Buzz Metrics. And today you are chief content officer. You have your own podcast, which is Filter Coffee, which is another universe which I want to talk to you about. Like,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
how does this all happen? Like, what's the journey like?
So obviously, none of this was obviously scripted, right? I've always found it interesting to be part of an industry which is not really mainstream, but
Like,
fairly niche, right? It's almost like what is going to be mainstream a few years from now, right? So I think
sure.
when we started with security, information security, and cryptography, it was a fairly uh, new field at that point in time. Right?
Right.
Not as big as it is today. This is I'm talking to you about a pre-Google, pre-Facebook era, if we can even imagine a time like that, right?
Right. Right.
Then I did spend some time. I'd moved, to the US at that point, and I spent a lot of time in consulting RFID industry.
Okay.
That came there was a connection between these two things because I was spending a lot of time on smart cards, on chip-based transactions, right? So
Right.
RFID radio frequency at the end of the day is really all about processes, right? So it did sort of have a connection, but it was a very different world. The world of RFID is the world of healthcare, the world of supply chain, the world of oil rigs and all of that, right?
Sure.
Wherever you can tag something. So that went on for a while, and then I had joined a startup which was selling RFID solutions as a
Okay.
systems integrator to the Department of Defense, right? So
Right.
that's as far as I could be from the world of advertising, right?
Correct.
Sitting in a Mississippi Air Force base, talking about how radio frequency can help the Air Force base better now. Right? And I
Right.
think when we came back, when I decided to come back to India, which was in 2010, that's when I joined Nielsen as to set up the technology research practice.
Right.
And I think that's when Nielsen had launched Nielsen Online, their
Correct.
online division. Um, so in between all of this, I was also a struggling independent filmmaker, and I really did take to the world of blogging very soon.
Nice.
So because of that, I was sort of moonlighting, setting up Nielsen Online in India,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then I quickly realized that is really the future. Uh,
Okay.
so again, another niche at that point, which is uh, digital audience measurement and social media and all of those things. Right? So that became really big, and I started to understand the world of digital marketing agencies, brands, social
Right.
media, and
Right.
all of that. Right? And then we did launch a joint venture between Nielsen and McKinsey in India,
Okay.
which was into the consulting space in social media. Right?
Sure.
And I'm talking about a time when Facebook had about 6 million people in India,
Right.
and we thought it was a big deal. Right? So
Right.
to put it in perspective, today Facebook probably has about 350 to 400 million people accessing it. Right?
Right.
So that's when social media sort of happened, and of course we launched many more products as part of this JV. And then of course Group M happened, and
Right.
Group M I started off with social media, and then slowly went on to take up responsibilities across data and now content.
But
Which,
how did that switch happen? Like from something which is numbers to something which is, you can say, creative, is what I would put it as.
I think the creative part was always there.
The filmmaker took over or something like that.
The filmmaker was always there.
Right.
When I was part of the RFID industry, I was also a short filmmaker, and we screened our films in South by Southwest and all of those
Wow.
festivals, right? So, which was
Nice.
really fairly small those days, not as big as what it is today.
Right. Right.
Um, so that was always there, and I think it's not so much about creativity as much as it is about understanding the platform. Right? I think we were some of the
Sure.
early people on Twitter, and we were some of the early bloggers in India. So that is a community that I've always been in touch with. Right? So
Nice.
even when I was at Nielsen, I was working with NASCOM, and we were sort of trying to do something around social media in India. Among some of the early adopters back then. Right?
Right.
So that was always there, and even today, I think, thankfully, I think I'm fairly lucky that way in the sense that my job involves a lot of creation, but at the same time, it also involves a lot of rationale and measurement
Data. Yeah.
and technology.
Yeah.
So yeah, been lucky, I would say, mostly to survive these various jumps.
Actually, but normally what I see in, so I come from the agency world, and in the agency world, you will see people who are, hardcore data people or hardcore into technology. Plus, you might see people who are hardcore into creativity. Very rarely you will find people who are, going from one to other, and that also seamlessly. So I think that's an interesting bit, because you will get correlations even in that world, right? Because
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
mentioned, even on the content side, it's more about the understanding of the platform that we need to have. So surely I'm sure your understanding of how these things work, how the measurement works, would also make you understand, okay, this is the kind of content, or this is the format of the content which would work as well, right?
right. But I think some of the things you're talking about is also a function of the organization, right? Um,
Sure.
an organization like a Google, which I have a lot of respect for, or an
Right.
organization like GroupM, or even an organization like Nielsen. The cultures are very conducive to making this shift, right?
Right. Right.
It's very difficult to do it. For example, I don't know about other organizations, but I know of organizations where I know for sure, even though they might be in advertising, they might not really have the culture uh, uh,
Sitting down with the
of
other team.
entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Group M, for example, as an organization, right, today, anybody, irrespective of how senior or not they are, you could create a solution, right? And it could be creative, it could be rational or whatever, and there is a safe place for it to flourish, for it to be incubated, etc. Right? I think
Nice.
cultures play a big role in making something like this happen.
Definitely it does. Any, um, obviously, like I'm taking this as you can say taking it for granted, but I'm sure behind this, like the kind of composed, you can say composed communication that you have, you must be a person who reads books and all,
Of course. And,
right?
yeah, I mean, what I do for a living and eating is in the time that I get outside reading. So
Okay,
eating
awesome.
is the mainstay.
So when you talk about culture, so I'm reading this book right now, which is by Ben Horowitz. What you do is who you are. His new book, right? And it speaks a lot about this idea which you were talking about in terms of how the culture is one of the main things,
Right.
and it's all about how you can organize things or organize change collectively if the right culture is set. And it's
Yeah.
about each and every step, right?
Yeah.
It's not about just saying ki we are a team or we are a flat team, we have a flat organization structure or something like that. So what are few of these cultural, you can say, things which you think should be there in an organization, and how can one inculcate this?
It's a fabulous question, right? And very few times in life do you actually explore that part, right?
Right.
See, to me, I think safe spaces are very important.
Perfect. Right.
So, for example, a safe space could also be a Zoom call, right,
Sure.
or a meeting, etc., where I think someone should not feel, um, the need to be someone else besides who they are. Right? So, whether it is a discussion on ideas or whether it is a discussion on a different approach to solve a problem, etc.
Right.
I think as a leader of any kind, whether you're leading 3 people or 50 people or 100 people, if you can
Right.
create that environment for the team where they can express themselves in whichever way they want, I think that is step one. Right?
Perfect.
And step two is also you've got to be also an organization which thrives on disruption. Right?
Right.
There is no point in creating a safe space if it is only about the discussion, it's only talk, right?
No action. Right.
Yeah. So if someone says, "Hey, listen, let's do it this way," then you will also have to be able to walk the talk and say, "Okay, listen, you know what? I'm going to give you X amount of time for you to crack the problem this way.
Right.
You go
Right.
figure it out." Right? I think that is very critical. Right? You've got to be actually an organization which can leverage this. I think the third point is uh, all of these things are possible only if you have an entrepreneurial culture. Right? Um, if you're going
Correct.
to uh, give someone a process and say, "Hey, this is the process in which you need to do it," then I don't know how that person will be able to think beyond that. Right? But
Right.
rather, if you're able to give someone a task and the resources they need, and if you trust their judgment,
Perfect.
to come up with something that is ambitious, then I think these are the elements that probably define the culture that I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
So I totally agree. Like it's a sense of, I would say, independence. So one of the things which I am really interested in, or which I'm really fascinated about, is how language is made
Yeah,
and how languages have been created. So I was just going through. There's a stream called etymology, right, which
yeah,
is basically showing how words have been constructed over this whole period from Greek,
yeah.
Latin, and all these things. So one of the things which I came across, and it just like blew my mind, is the word independence.
Hmm.
So independence, we normally think of it like, these words are very literal, but we just use them. Like we just say, I am independent. And if you ask anyone, they would be like, independence is equal to freedom.
Yeah,
But maybe not. It is more about you are dependent on your inside, like, independent.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's how that word has been over a period of time constructed. And what you were talking about is again on those lines, ki how exactly a person feels safe, a person is dependent on his own gut, and person can express himself however the hell he wants to. Maybe
Right.
they might fail, right? But failure is okay as long as you live to see another day.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah. We
I
can
think
do a separate
that's
episode on just etymology, right? Because I'm a passionate quizzer, and that's an easy area of interest, right?
we could. My
Yeah, but
mind is blown, right? So, in terms of over this entire span of your career, which has been across all these crazy, you can say, spaces, what is how have you seen the world of Martech evolve? Like as an outsider, if you were to see it from a bird's eye perspective, because you are talking about pre-Google days, and now we are talking about today, where we are, where everything is data centric. People are trying to look at numbers, and people are trying to make decisions or automate decisions so that things can flow naturally, right?
yeah, yeah,
So how do you see Martech evolving over these years?
yeah. See, it depends on how you're defining Martech, right? Like Martech, on one hand, you could just define it as the Adobe stack or the Google stack or whatever that you're building. But
Right, right.
just taking off from your question, right? I would like to take the more philosophical approach to this, right? I
Sure,
think
sure.
today more things are connected than they were earlier, right? I
Right,
think today an experience on a digital asset uh, to what you're doing as an organization or as a brand on CRM,
right,
to the kind of design language you have on your assets, um, and the how your backend is sort of mapped to all of this from a lead processing piece, right? All of these things
right,
today are connected, right?
right, right.
And they were not connected, even this much, even 5 6 years back, right?
Sure.
I think there are two parts to this. One is the understanding the individual elements, right? Like for
Right,
example, what is performance marketing, and what is the role of Martech in that, and all of that. And then there is also the other role, which is to understand the interplay or
right,
this delta advantage this gives you
right,
as a brand, right? To
right.
me, the latter is more fascinating, right?
Perfect.
In a connected world, then what is the disproportionate advantage that you have, right? So I think that is something that we should explore.
I'm sure, like, if you see a few years back, if you would see something like Salesforce or HubSpot, what started as maybe a sales solution, which is Salesforce, or what started as something which is an inbound marketing solution, today they are both somewhere serving both the sides, like marketing also, sales also, service also. Like that CRM, it's not just about, they understood key, it's about the customer across the entire journey, from sales operation to also, let's say, loyalty or something on those lines. So I guess that chain has actually made that connection happen. You have actually, so I see that you have implemented Salesforce and all these kind of things as well. So how what is the current CRM that you guys must be using at your end or something?
It depends. Yeah, it depends which part of this that you're talking about, right? And of course,
Right,
back from the time we implemented Salesforce, that was almost a decade back. Right?
right.
At that time, Salesforce itself was a very very different.
Different product, yeah.
At that time, that's what it was. Salesforce was all about managing your
Sales.
Salesforce, right?
Right,
So today, Salesforce has become a huge engine for Martech, like you spoke. Right? So the CRM pieces that we work with is very different. Like for example, the workflow part of it, where we are talking about what happens when you say something about a brand on social media, etc. That is very different. To
right,
of course, then at the back end, connecting it to the various call centers that you might have, you know,
Sure.
using them both from a crisis management perspective as well as from a lead management perspective.
Right.
Also, what is the role that your individual assets, digital assets, so your app and your website sort of play in that entire journey. Right?
Hmm.
All of that have become very very critical, right? And there are different platforms that we use for different parts of this journey. And then of course there is the other part of CRM, which is the whole data part of it. Right?
Right.
Every touch point you have with a consumer should result in some sort of a row or a column that we can fill about the individual.
Right. Right.
And I just want to be clear from a privacy perspective that we're talking not about PII data, which is personally identifiable data, but
Right.
I'm talking about at a device level, at a cookie level.
Sure.
So that needs to be critical as well, and building the profile of your audience on different platforms, understanding them more from a behavior perspective,
Right.
as well as from a platform consumption perspective. All of that is a different ball game altogether. Right?
Right.
So multiple techs which come into play at each of these points.
Awesome. That's like a very detailed answer. I
Sorry,
have
I
I have
rambled
a
along
ton
a
of
lot on
no
this.
no I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to stop myself
Right.
because we have a limited window right now. Maybe we could continue this later on. I would like to understand how do you use all this data and do like what does your day look like as a chief content officer, and what is that like? What do you do in terms of using all this data? What is the output that you are looking at, or what is the work that
Right.
you guys do?
Yeah, I think very clearly the way we look at this is that uh, see, content marketing is basically a cultural intervention.
Right.
Right? Now, for a cultural intervention, uh, you should be able to first understand the cultures and subcultures really well. Right? And data can play a big role in that.
Correct.
No, and when I say cultures and subcultures, what do I mean? So today, understanding football in India at a very deep platform level is very critical, right?
Right.
As much as it is in understanding the sport.
Hmm.
Um, Understanding, for example, hip hop in regional languages in India
Perfect.
is a journey by itself. Right?
That was a
Uh,
thought in my head. I was just going
yeah,
to say rap.
yeah.
It's like,
So and the thing is, what you see on the surface is very limited. Right? Like you see a Gully
right.
Boy, etc., at the surface level. But if you go down to a Punjabi hip hop scene, you go down to a Tamil hip hop scene,
Right.
it's very different, right? So and much of these can be surprisingly data led in terms of your understanding, right? As much as it is culture led. So my day currently is sort of taking cues from here,
Hmm.
and your ability to take those cues and um, create an opportunity. Now, this opportunity could be from a brand perspective. This opportunity
Right.
could be to create a show, right,
Sure.
on which solves a brand problem. The opportunity could be to invest in sports, right?
Right.
Whether it is esports or whether it is cricket, whether it is
Right.
football or badminton. Right?
Right.
Or it could also be to sort of have a very moment marketing sort of a thing, which probably starts and ends with a tweet
Correct.
with an Instagram story. All of these are possible. It all depends on what you want to do. Right? And then, of course, closing the loop on measurement. Did it work? We will be able to create that sort of an impact for the brand, right? So
Right.
that then closes the loop. So to me, that you know, every day in the life of a content marketer revolves around this loop of these 3 points.
Awesome. Awesome. Crazy, man. I am really loving this conversation. Uh, in terms of, so over this entire span of your career, what was one eureka moment, or maybe two or three eureka moments that you had, and you were like, hey, dude, yeah, this was crazy.
Mm. that's that will require a lot of thinking. Um, I think if you're defining Eureka moment as I didn't know this,
It
and
can be that also. Yeah.
I just jumped into this and I discovered something amazing. It's,
Right. Right. It can be that.
yeah, I think to me one of the Eureka moments would be um, probably 2011 when one of the brands that Sachin Tendulkar was associated with at that point was Boost.
Okay.
You remember the time when Sachin was
Right.
associated with,
Right. Right.
and we wanted to celebrate Sachin's 100th. And if you follow, do you follow cricket much?
I am not a hardcore cricket fanatic, but
Okay,
I
great.
know a little bit here and there.
That's a good thing. Then you probably didn't go through the pain that cricket fanatics went through because he was not getting to his 100th for a cricket.
That I know. That was something which people
Yeah.
were talking about. That was the
Yeah.
buzz at that time. Yeah.
So the whole idea was, we wanted to create this anthem,
Okay.
around that point when we did that. And this is also the first time that I discovered this animal called influencer marketing.
Okay.
And in 2011, influencer marketing was a very, very different world
I can imagine.
than what it is today, right? You probably had, I probably had the numbers of all the phone numbers of all the influencers in India on my phone.
Okay.
Right? I could just call up, hey, this, that, I'll figure it out, right?
Right. Right.
So that, what started off at that point, and when I see that industry and how amazingly it has evolved over the years, that is an extraordinary journey. But at that moment, for me, it was huge. So that is one Eureka moment. I think the other Eureka moment is, um, as an independent filmmaker, when I made my first film, for it to be screened at a festival like South by Southwest,
Definitely. Yeah.
in Austin. So it's not very far from where I used to live at the point, but still, um, that was huge, right? The first time your film is being shown to in a theater full of audience in a country where you're not from,
Right.
and and the whole process of making that film, right? Like, um, people, who from doctors to lawyers to janitors. There were multiple people in my film. None of them really worked for money. They all worked for
Passion.
experience.
Yeah.
So to create something like that, and then for that to be selected in a festival, that was beautiful.
Crazy.
Yeah, and there are many, many more, but these two stand out for me.
What was the film about?
The film is actually it's actually inspired by a short story that Mr. Shotajit Ray had written. The short story is called Bonkim Babu's Lapse of Memory. But I written it in English, and we shot it in Texas. So it was nothing to do with any Bonkim Babu. It was inspired by this.
Right.
Yeah. So it was about a workaholic.
Okay. Can we check that on YouTube right now?
Good. You can search for Haze. H-A-Z-E is the name of the film. 2006 is when it was.
Awesome.
So I can send you the link.
If you have the link handy, you could just share it in the chat. So
Sure.
if you want to check it, we'll also put it up on maybe our social channels. So
It's a fairly old film. But,
that's okay.
It's
Just about
yeah.
just
So
about
yeah,
confidence.
happy to share. Happy to share.
Right. Definitely.
Obviously, will always remain a very important moment. Yeah, but that was that. That's what it was about.
What's the current thing which you are creating right now? Are there any scripts or something in the pipeline?
Yeah, most of there always is, right? Like if you're an independent filmmaker, at any point in time, there always is a script you're making. The only problem is time and money.
Right.
But right now, much of my creation is being consumed by the podcast, which is literally like having a child. Like it's
Understood.
yeah. So that's taking up most of the the creative firepower.
I can imagine, and the kind of guests that you have, I am imagining ki, it must be surely because you are not just sticking to one kind of a field or something, but
Yeah.
you are actually having different creators, activists, and all these different people in the space who are coming on your podcast. So, how did the podcast happen?
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of the audio medium. Right? I
Okay,
think for me, um, see, growing up in India, it was always um actually radio was a very very big part of life back then,
right,
right? So, um, but it was largely in one way or the other associated with music, right? And at
sure,
best with sports commentary,
okay,
but mostly with music. But when I moved to the US, I realized that this whole other animal called talk radio, right?
right,
So if you listen to and today you can from India listen to NPR, National Public
yeah, yeah,
Radio
yeah,
Network.
sure,
So almost every drive of mine was uh, while listening to NPR at some level. Right? So to me, that sort of translated into podcasts, and I love audio as a medium because of the intimate nature of it. Right? Today,
mm,
if you listen to a podcast, um, invariably all of us listen to it using some sort of a earphone, and it's much more intimate than watching a video. Watching a video has a lot of distractions
distance,
associated,
distance also,
and it is also sort of a lean forward sort of a medium. Right?
right,
A podcast is more of a lean back sort of a medium, and I love what you can do with it, right? And which is also why scientifically, if you see the sort of recall you have on ads that run on podcasts is much more than what you have on video.
right,
It's 3x, 4x of that, and that's because of the nature that intimacy that I'm talking about. Right? So I always wanted to develop this pie, grow this pie in India, and we've been working with many partners, whether it is Savan or Spotify or IBM,
right,
and IBM has been one of the early movers in the space in this Vox Media. And Amit Doshi, who's the founder, a very dear friend. And while we were trying to do all of this, we also realized that maybe there is merit in creating a show which talks about culture. It's not about any one thing. It could be about
right,
books. It could be about entrepreneurs. It is about um, what we do in activism.
right,
Sometimes it is about the arts, right? A lot of stand-up comedians have been there, mostly authors. Right?
sure,
Lately you also see lot more investors in the show and a lot of entrepreneurs in the show as well, right? So I like playing around with the canvas of it. I like the fact that it is not about any one thing, so that
right,
gives me the width to sort of talk about many different things. In fact, my most favorite episode on the show is one where we discussed caste and the history of caste in India.
right.
Um, so so that's the way it was. It's a very different kind of an audience, a kind of an audience who appreciate it for the canvas rather than just for the depth of it. Right?
Understood.
Um,
Awesome.
so yeah, so that really works for the show, and that's how it started.
I have to catch a few episodes on it. I just went through the thing. I listen to podcasts, but
What do you
I
listen to mostly?
I listen to Tim Ferriss is there,
Sure.
then James Altucher, and recently I've started listening to Varun Dugirala.
Yeah.
Yeah, so advertising is there. That is a new addition to the podcast,
Yeah.
and I
So
think
Varun's show actually has a very interesting genesis, right?
right,
So Varun is a dear friend and colleague, and he was a guest in my show when I was doing a pilot. So in a way, he was a guinea pig.
okay,
Um, and so Varun came on the show, and then very quickly we realized, both me and IBM, that Varun should actually be on the other side. Right? He'll make a great host.
okay,
And I absolutely love advertising instead. I think it's one of the best shows
right.
on marketing in India. If you're in marketing,
It
if you're a
is
business of content, that is the show.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued. Who are your favorite maybe podcasters and YouTubers and Instagrammers in that order? Like, because it will be interesting for people to know. Okay, what do you consume as content, right?
Right. So podcasts. I think I spoke to you about how I used to listen to NPR,
Right.
and for me, my most favorite show on radio, whether it is on radio or on podcast, will always be Fresh Air. Fresh
Okay.
Air is hosted by Terry Gross. It's part of the NPR network. Right.
Right.
It is like Filter Coffee. It is not about any one thing. Right? But
Right.
those conversations are extraordinary.
Sure.
And then I've been also deeply fascinated by How I Built This, which is a show
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
Guy
Yeah.
Raz. And Guy Raz is also, from the NPR, House of NPR. Right?
Right.
In India, I'm the biggest fan of Amit Verma's Seen and the Unseen. Right? I think, hands down, I think it's the best podcast.
Okay.
Amit is a dear friend. He's also been on Filter Coffee as a guest. But if you haven't listened to it, I would strongly recommend.
I will definitely check
Is
it.
that you need a lot of time for Amit's show. It's called Seen and the Unseen, and it shows average about 2 hours an episode. So
Wow.
really, really long shows.
Right.
You need the kind of time to invest in it. Varun's show is, of course, is great. I love Varun's show. And yeah, there are many more. But if you ask me to pick two or three, I would go with these.
Awesome. In terms of YouTubers, do you see a lot of YouTube?
Yeah, of course, right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in the business of it.
Right. Right.
I do see a lot of. Yeah, so YouTube is a big part of my life. But see, YouTubers is a very, very generic term. Right? Like, for example, I love what uh, Film Companion has done with their YouTube channel.
Right.
But I'm a marketer. I love people who create great content and
Right.
are able to leverage a great audience and a niche. Because cinema is such an important part of this country's life, and the fact that we didn't have anything up until this happened is fascinating. And I love how Film Companion South and Film Companion overall
Right.
sort of
Right.
exist.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I'm a huge fan of this. I've told Anupama this as well. That it's something that I'm really, really a huge fan of. While on YouTube, one of our clients also has one of the channels that I admire the most, which is Royal Stack Barrel Select large short films. Right?
Okay.
Of course, you know my background now,
Right.
that of a struggling
Films.
filmmaker. So large short films is a beautiful, beautiful content marketing thing, but it is also a great collection of extraordinary cinema.
I know. I have seen it.
Yeah.
I've come across it like way back, maybe 6, 7 years back or something. They used to always release these short films, and
Yeah, but probably more recent than that. But yeah, it is also grown. The kind of
Right.
people who showcase their films there is absolutely brilliant. In fact, my new favorite YouTube sensation is actually Ravichandran Ashwin. Right? It's amazing how easily he's taken to that medium.
Okay.
If you haven't checked out his content, you should
Not really.
absolutely. He has guests ranging from people in the entertainment business to mostly sportsmen, and it's the way a sports person has taken to content is just
Right. Right. Have you seen Every Frame a Painting?
no. Tell me more about it.
You should check this out. This is basically there's this. It's stopped right now. Like one of my favorite YouTube channels is Every Frame a Painting. They stopped publishing content. They talk about films and how exactly the director has done it. So it has a lot of analysis, creative analysis, how they actually went about it.
Right.
So that's crazy. One more which I really like is Nerd Writer One. I don't know if have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So that's crazy, like the kind of content. And I somewhere aspire to build something like that. So
That's
that
brilliant. Yeah.
research and after even walks, if you see, some of the research on hip hop and all, which they have put up in sort of like a mix of mixed media, motion graphics, and all.
Yeah.
That is crazy stuff.
You sound like someone who loves hip hop. I would strongly recommend. I don't know if you've seen this, LB. This channel that used to exist, it used to thrive, it still exists.
Okay.
It's 101 India.
Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah. So 101 India
Seen
did
their
a great
documentaries.
show on
Yeah.
on hip hop. Yes, 101 used to be one of my most favorite YouTube channels as well.
It's crazy. Even Vice, like some of the reporting which they do, Vice, and some of the things which they have built, it's brilliant.
Yeah. I think India seems, to me, it still seems like to have like an identity crisis. But
It
yeah,
does.
wise overall. Yeah.
Overall, yeah. I forget this guy. There was this guy internationally. What he did is he just invented a fake jeans brand and actually went to the, I think, fashion show in Paris, showcased his jeans which he has just bought from the street, and he just actually put it on the ramp, then made it a brand and sold it to a guy or gave it to a guy who can actually run it for himself. That was like the most epic thing which I saw.
Yeah, I'd love to check out that story. I haven't heard.
Right. I'll share the link. I'll share the
Please
links
do.
with
Please do.
yeah.
Yeah.
His name is Uba Butler.
Huh.
So crazy. One other thing which he did is he just said, "Can I open a fake restaurant? And can I get a booking in advance for people?" So he stays somewhere in UK, and he just lists down on maybe one of these sites, like trip, make my trip, or something like that over there, and he just lists it down. Starts keeps on putting fake reviews, starts taking calls and saying, "No, we are full, we are full." To the point that the hype is created, it becomes the number one restaurant over there. And then he has a fake dinner with fake people, giving them pretentious stuff, which is just bought from somewhere, put in the oven, and just served to them, and saying
Right.
this is the theme of this place. Crazy shit, man.
There can be a film as well. It sounds like, yeah. But that's
It
amazing.
might as well be, I guess. So actually, we are kind of running short on time. So what I would like to do is I would like to understand from you, in terms of marketing. If you were to define marketing in one word, it's a impossible thing. But if you were to define marketing in one word, what will that one word be?
See, it is, I would say, um, so the sentence by itself will be a bit of a downer because it's not
Right.
much.
Right.
See, it is inspired to act, right?
Okay.
What I mean, and each of these words have a meaning in it. Right?
Sure.
To me, I feel that every great communication, right, has to be an inspiration. Right?
Right.
See, what are we actually doing? Right? It's a it's a metal plus plastic thing, metal plus plastic plus rubber thing, right? That runs, right?
Right.
Now in marketing we are attributing. Um, I'm talking about automobiles, right?
Right.
We are attributing dreams to it, right?
Right.
We're saying that this if you buy this car,
Right.
this is a way of you expressing yourself and all of that, right? So a lot of this is actually doesn't really exist except in
Right.
our imagination, right?
Right.
So marketing and whose subset is advertising. All of this is this extraordinarily abstract thing, right? That you're actually trying to create, right? Which doesn't really exist. Tomorrow if there is an earthquake, the fact that this car stood for being an entrepreneur and this car stood for the power of dreams will not matter. They both
Right.
will get
Right.
crushed, right?
Right. Right.
So it doesn't really exist in the real world. But for to create this, you're adopting this thing, and that has to be an inspiration, right? And that has to inspire you enough to act. Now, one of the acts could be buying that brand. It could also be something else. We work with a brand called Tata Tea, and um, one of the campaigns that gives me a lot of joy to work on is Jagore.
Right.
Jagore actually is a campaign that we activate every time there is an election. Right? It is amazing how a tea brand, it's just tea, and it should talk about getting refreshed. It should talk about taste, aroma, etc. No, we are talking about activism.
Right.
So to me, that is the inspiration, right? And in that case, my acting is not always just go out and buy tea, right? That act is actually, go and make sure your name is in the vote register. Make sure you read up about your candidate, right? And I feel that is where, the brand actually has an impact in the society that it lives in.
Sure.
So that it's a wonderful job. It's probably the best job in the world to inspire someone to act, right?
Definitely.
That's what I'll probably say.
Awesome, man. I love that answer. In terms of campaigns, let's say when you are looking at marketing or when you're looking at advertising, which is your forever favorite, campaign which you have seen getting executed, and you were like, wow, man.
It has to be the priceless campaign by Mastercard.
Okay. Yeah.
Hands down.
Definitely.
And um, it's to me, the most extraordinary canvas for communication, right? Here is a brand that is telling you that what it can't do. It tells you everything that it can't.
Right.
So I spoke to the person who wrote it, and I'm very happy, very very proud that it came from the house of WPP, where I spent most of my time. So that to me, in India, I think the invention of the Amul banner, right? And what it can then do and how it can stay relevant, irrespective of season, irrespective of anything else. That to me is a huge marketing moment.
Yeah. So, I think for me, they invented topical marketing or moment marketing, as they call it. Like we are talking about it. So many people are talking about it now. Like maybe a year back or so, it was like everyone is taking part into topical. I was thinking, साला अमूल तो पहले से कर रहा है यार, and क्या तरीकों से कर रहा है.
And not only that, in fact, in the early days of social media, my only advice to the team used to be, when you create a brand post on social media for a brand, it has to have all the elements that an Amul campaign would.
Wow. Okay.
One is it has to be topical. So there should be an answer to the question, why now? Like, why today? Right?
Awesome.
Second is it has to be entertaining by itself. Right? And then there definitely has to be a brand hook. Right? And there has to be a great tonality, right? The word, right? So whatever you say is true for a social media content today. To me, that inspiration is entirely from Amul.
Awesome.
One banner. Yeah.
I think so. Recently, like a lot of people are looking at content which is being done by Dunzo. Have you looked at some of their content, Dunzo, on social media as such?
Yeah.
So I feel they are perfectly imbibing that whole Amul spirit, and much of their content, I feel like they're the digital Amul for me.
Yeah. Whether it is Dunzo or Zomato or Netflix in India, all of these brands sort of do that very, very well.
Right. Awesome, man. I think this is got to be one of my favorite episodes because I got to, learn a lot more. And there are still so many questions running in my head, but due to shortage of time, I need to currently take few questions from the audience which they have asked. So Apurva Khajuria, he's basically asking about how should a content strategy be of a startup? It's a very broad question, but he's asking starting from scratch, whether it should start from social media first or experimenting rather than just optimizing something.
See, I don't think social media first is a rule for any brand, right?
Right.
I can tell you of big brands today for whom I think social media is irrelevant. Right? So I think it should also always be a means to the end, and the end is always your target audience. Right? If your target audience is not on social media, the target audience is on the road, then that is where you start.
Right.
So that, but yeah, like you said, it's really very difficult to do this. But I think it is important that you are in the platform where your audience is, and you are saying something that is impactful in their lives. It could probably, if you are a startup, you probably are going to rely on a LinkedIn more than you do. And if it is a B2B brand, it is a very different set of an impact that you're seeking. Right? So I think step one, be where your audience is. Step two, know exactly what you want out of the content. Right? Whether you want to build brand, whether you want a call to action. And step three is Amul.
It's Amul. Awesome. So Karthik, it's been a pleasure, more than a pleasure actually, to have this conversation with you. I just hope this was like one of those podcasts which is like 2 hours long, and we could have gone on for another hour. But let's do that maybe sometime. Let's have a session 2 or something sooner. And thanks a lot everyone for joining us. Let's catch up again next week on another episode of Dude, Where's My ROI? Till then, cheers.